We have mainly been discussing films as a form of art that is capable of exploring trauma and the repercussions of dealing and healing from one's trauma. But this really extends to any form of art and to any genre. When observing these films or any other art dealing with trauma, it pays off to look at any allusions they might be pulling from. One of my favorite ways that a film can craft a web of illusion is through the use of music. Music often seems to transcend its original context and find entirely new meaning and impact when placed into another. One film that I feel achieves this effectively in the area that our unit is currently looking at is 2017's The Devil's Candy. The Devil's Candy makes use of a music genre that is perhaps more linked to exploring trauma than any other genre, with the exception of the blues perhaps, and that is heavy metal. There's only a short list of metal songs used throughout the course of the film, and the doom metal group Sun assisted in some of the soundtrack. When observing these songs as allusions that add to the themes present in The Devil's Candy, they assist in making the film's presentation of trauma, spirituality, and inner turmoil all the more rich. Sure, filmmakers do not always utilize their soundtracks as a way to make meaningful allusions, sometimes it's just simply for tone. But think of this video as observing how to use an illusion that makes one's own creation more meaningful, especially when dealing with the theme of trauma. Welcome to Analysis with Alex, a YouTube channel that aims to provide you lengthy video essay explorations in the form of units to provide a resource to grow your skills in cultural analysis and in turn self-growth. Think of this as a channel you can go to get access to the film classes you never got to take in college because you either couldn't go to college or because it didn't fit into the requirements that they laid out for you. That's why I'm here. This video is part of a series titled The Terror of Trauma, which explores horror films that deal with the theme of trauma in some manner. If you haven't already, I would encourage you to go back and watch my other videos around this subject matter. There's a playlist on the channel so you can access them easily as well. Also, it typically helps if you've seen the movie beforehand before you watch me talk about it here, so seek out The Devil's Candy however you see fit. Also, any references that I use will be linked in the description, so that way you can have further reading or some further viewing if you'd like. And before we get into The Devil's Candy any further, if you value this channel as an educational resource and you want to join up on more explorations and videos, please hit the subscribe button so you can know when more videos come out. The Devil's Candy has a relatively simple plot. Jesse, a struggling painter, moves into a dream house with his family. The trauma attached to that site from demonically motivated child killings begins to impact Jesse and his family. Then ultimately Raymond, a previous occupant of that house, becomes the main antagonist as he is compelled by these demonic forces to return to the site of trauma and attempt to continue the cycle of killings. However, Jesse is able to overcome his own demonic influence and stop Raymond and end the cycle. The Devil's Candy speaks to the power of music and art through its use of musical allusions and its critique on the art industry. That critique seems to call attention to the art industry's interest in exploiting trauma, which is coded here as demonic forces, for the sake of their own personal gain. Before looking at how music and allusions to heavy metal are used in the movie, perhaps a brief look into how the heavy metal genre engages with trauma would be beneficial. It's not a secret that heavy metal engages with intense emotions and themes. Just a brief dive into the genre will reveal that to you. To understand that metal can be a vessel of catharsis and healing, though, is something that might not be as obvious. There was a brief discussion in our last video over catharsis, but it was ultimately about the notable lack of it in funny games. In literature, catharsis refers to a process of cleansing or purging of emotions. Aristotle believed this was the function of a great story, especially something like a tragedy. When observing something like music, though, especially extreme music, catharsis then becomes something collective, something even more powerful. A good way to understand this relationship without actually having to go to a metal show is to watch the short documentary Down Again, released in 2018, which will be linked in the description below for you. Down Again follows hardcore band Chimera's frontman Mark Hunter and his relationship with his music and how he uses it as a method to heal and cope with his mental illness. There are many moments that speak to how heavy music fits into trauma through various ways, such as expressing one's environment and the turmoil in it, metal's tendency to reflect on real-world issues and problems, how it provides catharsis to a collective group at live shows. But one moment that I think really speaks to our exploration of how this music can be repurposed in other art forms happens right here.
There's a need to kind of express themselves in a different way or to get it out, something that they feel like they can't just get out in a conversation. And it gets them starting to express themselves in a whole variety of different ways. And I think that leads them to be very attracted to art and artistic expression.
I definitely like to have my art reflect my feelings, so I chose to create heavy music because that's the feeling inside I had was to, I guess, rage or something, and just wanted to scream, and it felt cathartic and therapeutic to be able to not only express the feelings on paper, but then to actually physically perform them and have this exorcism, this release into the studio and the microphone and whatnot. Kind of makes, not the issue go away, but it almost feels that you have a little more control over certain situations.
And I find that word choice of exorcism pretty interesting given the film that we are discussing. Another interesting point to consider is this point right here.
Personally, I was attracted to the tones. Just kind of made me feel like I wasn't alone with my depression, and it seemed like metal had just different stories to tell that were a little more grounded in reality that I could connect with.
So even without the inclusion of lyrics, this music has a lot of power when exploring feelings and ideas linked to trauma. So what does knowingly utilizing metal and the Devil's Candy do? Music and art are central to the story. Just look at how it starts. Given that music is placed as such a powerful force in the plot itself, we can infer that the actual song choice of both diegetic and non-diegetic music also holds powerful connotations. After that, we move to the first use of a popular metal song used in the film, as we see the opening of Am I Evil by Metallica playing over painting. A cover of the same song by Diamond Head, Am I Evil deals with similar themes and concepts as The Devil's Candy. The speaker of the song had his mother falsely accused of witchcraft and has vowed his life to take revenge on those enacting the trauma of making him watch his mother be burned alive at such a young age. The chorus then brings into question if the speaker becomes exactly that in which the perpetrators desired him to be, evil. This speaks to a central tension in the film as Jesse begins to experience success in the art world, but at the expense of allowing demonic spirits to guide him in this pursuit. Another moment that pulls on a similar meaningful allusion comes from when Jesse approaches the art dealer and Slayer's You Against You plays.
Never should hell with enjoy your paradise. This hell is just for you.
As the title suggests, it is once again about internal conflict of understanding where your struggles may truly come from. The song points to the folly of man as residing and trusting in his own plans for paradise, but how they may ultimately lead to his own personal hell. Once again, this simple allusion points to the plot of The Devil's Candy. Though struggling, Jesse and his family get their dream home, but it turns out that that home is a site of trauma that holds dark forces. The film ends with another song from Metallica, For Whom the Bell Tolls. This is perhaps the quintessential Metallica song about trauma, as it pulls inspiration from Ernest Hemingway's novel by the same name. Both follow the turmoil and trauma enacted by battle in World War I. This is perhaps a fitting song to conclude the film with, as we see Jesse already starting the process to overcome the trauma of what he and his family had just been through, staring at the heavens and crying, similar to that of the protagonist in both the song and the novel. These are just a few examples of how these references and allusions are being used, not to even mention the few other instances that use songs that also deal with inner turmoil and trauma, from Pantera and the Cavalier conspiracy in the film. So this movie has some good song selection. What does that have to do with our exploration of trauma though? Well, to return to our observation of Down Again earlier in the video, it points out to one of the many tools an artist or even just an individual has at their disposal to make sense of trauma in the world: other artists and their creations. Keep in mind that a lot of these songs are used in a diegetic manner. They are a part of the world of the film. We watch these characters consume their songs, and thus in turn, they tell us something about the characters, their worldviews, their situations, their feelings. These songs act as a method of character development. Jesse actually listens to these songs as we would, allowing them to embody some element of his present situation, allowing him to know that he is not actually alone. This collective, cathartic nature of the music appears to extend to spirituality in the spiritual realm, given Jesse's final expression in the movie. The way these songs get utilized in the film reflects the sentiments outlined in Down Again and many other observations about heavier music. They can act as a cathartic collective experience for many people, as does any genre of music. The Devil's Candy happens to use heavy metal in a pointed, meaningful way. On a creative writing level, it's a clever way to add character development without having to sidetrack the story. And on a cultural studies level, it allows the film to comment and utilize heavy music as a way of expressing traumatic events and concepts through the cathartic collective power of music. In short, keep in mind how music can be used outside of just developing tone or characters. Consider how music fits into a larger picture and what that larger picture thus adds to the movie you are watching. It's a simple addition that adds a massive impact. Thank you so much for continuing this exploration of horror cinema and themes involving trauma. Please let me know what you thought of this video in the comments, and please, if you are interested in using this channel as an educational resource, as I said before, then go ahead and subscribe to it so you can continue to experience a more rich exploration of this genre and its relatively popular theme of trauma. Once again, as I said in other videos, I'm currently in the middle of trying to find a job and moving, so videos might continue to be sporadic for a period of time, but they will continue to be published. Once again, thank you for your time, and I will see you all during our next exploration.